So started my career as a television reporter, then became a publicist, worked in public affairs for many years. Ended up somehow in design. I don't know how that happened, but now I've been working for Frost for, as Vince said, over 15 years. And my speciality is in brand consulting. And often, as Vince mentioned, taking very, very complex information that people are trying to communicate and getting that into a compelling narrative that is approachable for people. Because whether we like it or not, the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do is to communicate to others, and we have to be respectful that the end user has to actually be able to understand what we're trying to say. And I find that this is often a real challenge for people who come from complex professions like architects, where they're trying to tell you a lot and sometimes have that difficulty in communicating in a concise way. So let's get on with it. So like every good story, this is going to be told in a series of chapters. And chapter 1 is going to be about, well, why do we need to become storytellers? Because I've got to say, I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but the word storyteller is everywhere, even in our industry. It's all about storytelling. Why did that happen? It's happening because we're seeing a fundamental shift in the models of communication. So what used to happen in what's called the traditional model of communication, what's often kind of sometimes referred to as the push model of communication, was that it performed very differently to today. And we had, for people like architects, it was quite a formal thing. You know, you talked about your work in quite a formal way. And now we're moving to what's called an engagement model. And in the engagement model, it's much more conversational. People want to engage in a conversational way. It's a two-way thing when you look at all the channels that people communicate through now. In the old push model, it was things like television or newspapers, where there really was only one way for the conversation to go. But now, if we look at social media, it's usually a two-way dialogue. I'm going to post something, you're going to post something back, you know, and the conversation keeps going. And so, where in the past, architects might be just about showing a portfolio and assuming that I'm going to show my portfolio of work and from that I'm going to win more similar projects, people are actually looking for different things. They're looking for what we call content. So content is this big word that we all talk about now in communications. And fundamentally, content is about deploying your message through lots of different engaging channels. So content is often video, or content can be just an image, or content can be a blog. It can be lots of different things. And so again, where in the past architects might just go, I've got my portfolio, I've got my credentials, please give me your project. Now, what people are looking from consultants is what's called thought leadership. And I'm sure that this is a term that's getting bandied around a lot by everybody as well. And what that means is that the client or the people who are interested in what you have to say are really interested in what you think and what you have to say, because we're living in an era where there's a huge plethora of options and choices and changes, and they want you to lead them through it. So you need to be a thought leader. And then finally, the other two things that are happening, which are really important, are things used to be produced in a way that was very slow and lasting. So you wanted to show people how wonderful you were, so you created this big, beautiful, glossy book, and it was really impressive, and you put it on people's tables, and you thought immediately, I'm going to win lots of work out of that. But now we live in an era where communications is actually fast and disposable. So, you know, I don't know, is anyone here using Snapchat? That's kind of scary, because Snapchat's probably the biggest growing channel at the moment for communication. So Instagram, Snapchat, all of these sort of areas now where people are communicating, a lot of it is about disposability, that it doesn't last very long, and therefore you put something up and it's gone, and that's part of what makes it engaging for people. And then finally, the last thing is, in the old model, things were done in a mass way. Like, so for example, in communications, you invest a huge amount of money in a TV commercial, you'd put it on television and you reach a huge amount of people, and you had to go from what was called like a more broadcast model. And now you can do it in a very niche way, like the way that we can use communications. We can serve up communications through things like Facebook feeds, which are very niche, which I don't know how many of you have had the experience where you've Googled something and then suddenly you're on a page and there's an ad served up to you that was about what you Googled. Like, we've all had that experience. So big data, all those things mean we can be watched all the time, what our behaviour is, and information can be served up in a very niche way to our specific interests. So the whole paradigm is changing. So the other thing that's really, really important that's happening at the moment in communication, and for all of us, and I'm sure we all recognise this, this chart, is that there are more and more choices. It's like all the time, there's so much more to consume, there's so much more to know. And the corollary of that is that we've got less and less time. So this creates a really important nexus that's happening. And what the kind of guru of marketing of this age, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Seth Godin, says, is that what that means is that everything we do, that everything we're trying to communicate about has to be remarkable. And when he says the word remarkable, he uses that with a lot of intention, because what he's saying is, would somebody talk about it? Would somebody go, the thing you've just shown me, the story you've just told me, I'm going to go and tell that to somebody else because it was so amazing that it's worth sharing. So in this era of content, in this era of shareability, we have to think about whether what we're sharing with people is remarkable or is it ordinary. And it is not a coincidence that I am wearing a dress that has a cow print on it, apart from the fact that my son told me I should wear it. But Seth Godin talked about the purple cow. Has anyone heard about the purple cow? And he said, if you drive down the road and you see a cow, it's kind of like cows have become like wallpaper. You won't notice that cow. But if that cow is purple, you will stop and you will look at it because it is remarkable. So this is a really important thing to be thinking about when you're communicating is it kind of the same old speak? Is it the same old image that I've seen time and time again? Because more and more that's just going to become wallpaper, that as people get kind of flooded with so much stuff and so much stuff to look at that it's just they're going to pass it by like that an ordinary cow? Or are you creating the purple cow that people stop and pay attention to? So this is Seth's, I think, a great quote. People do not buy goods and services. And when I say goods and services, this includes architecture, it includes design, it includes all of us. They buy relations. So that's part of that relationship they want to have with you. They want to be sharing content. They want to have a relationship with you. They buy stories and they buy magic. And if there's one thing you take away from today, I'd really like you to remember this because I think it's a really fundamental thing to understand in the new world of communications that we're all within. Chapter 2. I told you it's going to be a story. Okay, we're on the second chapter. So how do we actually then frame our stories so that they have this more remarkable characteristics to them? So we get above the ordinary because a lot of it is just about a decoding process. It's about putting the effort into... My hair is making this mic click, excuse me. It's about putting the effort into the storytelling, actually spending time thinking the product itself isn't good enough. I have to craft the story that goes with it, that will enable people to engage with it effectively. So this is one of the tools that we use. So if you ever end up working with us, and I hope maybe some of you will, this is one of the tools we use. We call this the brand molecule because you have to give every tool a name. In the middle of the brand molecule is what we call the core brand idea. And this is an organising idea. And whenever we create a brand, because we're trying to create something that fundamentally engages with people, you always want the brand idea, which is an organising principle, which enables everything to hold together. Now, I always talk about branding and storytelling in very much the same ways. Think about it like an arrow, right? So an arrow to be effective has to have a tip, and it's the arrow tip that enables you to get into people's minds. If you try and shove the other end of the arrow into people, it's very unpleasant. You know, I'm sure any arrow entering your body is unpleasant, but the thick end will not go in. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is the problem that not just architects, but so many people we deal with have, is that they don't understand you have to have a pointy end to your narrative. So that's the brand idea. And then we put all these things around the brand idea. And I'm going to give you, I can't unpack all of this tonight because it would take too long, but I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about purpose and I'm going to talk about brilliance because in some ways, these are the most important for you to appreciate in crafting stories. Okay, has anybody seen this man before? 31 million, almost 32 million views. Okay, so if Seth Godin is the modern god of marketing, this guy, Simon Sinek, is the guru, if you like, of purpose. And he talks about purpose, and he's actually got an amazing following. He's an incredible speaker. If you're not already following what Simon Sinek says, you should. He's a phenomenal social commentator. And Simon Sinek's theory is that a really simple thing, and again, getting things down to incredible simplicity. And his theory is that people follow your why, not your what. And he has amazing examples of why the Wright brothers were able to succeed, where all these other people at the same time who were trying to fly weren't able to get off the ground, if you excuse the pun. So His whole theory is that if you want people to follow you, if you want people to be engaged with what you have to say, you have to speak from the why. You have to actually evangelize, and you have to tell them why you're doing what you're doing. And I can't tell you how many clients I have and how many people want to talk about the what. So for architects, it's fascinating to talk about the what. We use this stone, we use this glazing, we're constructed it in this way, and da-da-da-da-da. And you get this incredibly complex explanation sometimes, but they don't actually sometimes tell you, well, what was the human need that was met? What was the problem that we had to solve? And you need to dramatise that. You need for people to go, absolutely. And when we talk to people about creating a compelling why, we often do it from a standpoint of righting a wrong in a category. Like, so for example, in a different category, we were working with a client called Cellar Masters, and they came from a fundamental standpoint of belief that it was wrong, that people thought that to drink a good bottle of wine, you had to be well educated and pay a lot of money. Their whole mission was to put extraordinary wines on the table of ordinary people. And when you tell that story, then the product follows, but that they can kind of really explain, and that's why we create these wines, and that's why that wine's going to be good for you. So they talk from the why. Okay, another really important thing to be able to do is to be able to articulate what we call your proposition. Now, proposition is a fancy word for the why buy. And if you ever end up doing anything in advertising, this is the fundamental part of any brief, but it's also the why care. And what anybody needs to be able to do when they communicate about any product, about any business, about any brand, is to be able to get it down to one sentence of why would I buy this one? So when we work with clients, we often have a bit of an exercise where we say, imagine you met me at a party and you have to convince me in one sentence why I'm going to buy your product over somebody else's, or why I should come to you. Why? What's the reason why you're better than somebody else? And you have to be able to express it extremely succinctly in only one sentence. We're very tough on people. The other thing I wanted to talk about quickly is translating features into benefits. So this is another really important thing to be thinking about, is talking about the features again. It's a bit like explaining the what without the why. You need to translate it into what it actually does for people. So we've created this incredible louver system. So what? What's the benefit for somebody? What do they get out of it? And sometimes it's more important to talk about the benefit before you even talk about the feature, but it's very important to be able to translate and have this marriage between the feature and the benefit. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick examples of how we've done this, and then I'm going to unpack a couple of other examples of how to do great storytelling. So this is an example. We were working with a developer, we were working with architects as well, and they came to us about a new development they were doing. And I don't know, in property marketing, it's getting pretty hard to differentiate one product from the next. You know, they're all starting to, I don't know how you feel, but you know, a lot of things are starting to feel quite the same and quite well designed, but still quite similar. So we really probed quite hard with the developer, with the architect about, well, what do you believe in? Why are you doing this development? What do you fundamentally believe in doing that's driving why you're creating this development? And it was amazing because the developer was actually a builder. You look at him and you think he's not a very, sophisticated guy. Wasn't wearing Prada. And it was amazing. We do this exercise. What we do is we give people all these magazines and we say, like, mood board out for us, like, what's this brand about? And he pulled out this picture of a mountain and he stuck this mountain on one of the mood boards. And we said, well, why did you pick that? And he said, it's beautiful. He said, and I just really believe that when people encounter beautiful things in nature and they see things that really satisfy that sense of beauty, that it makes people happy. And there we had it, like that purpose and that brand idea. And then it kind of becomes the theme for the story. So then when we worked on this marketing, the name of the development, Amara, means beautiful. And you can see that we work very closely with the architects to show the architecture, but we used illustrations. So we actually, in every way we delivered the brand, we wanted to make it a beautiful experience for people. We wanted them to actually feel that they're encountering something beautiful. And we commissioned all these beautiful illustrations. And wanted to show the life, the actual emotional characteristics of the life. And we created things like coffee cups, and then obviously we translated it into the display suite. But because we had that really clear theme, we had a plot line for everything to hang off. And that's a lot of the reason why we're trying to develop these stories, is to make sure that we've got a coherent story to tell. Here's another example, one that Vince worked on, wherever he is, and he had this brilliant idea. We were working on this very large development in Liverpool, and the developer here similarly had a really strong point of view. He felt that most developments in Western Sydney were crap, and he basically wanted to go out there and create something that was good, and he'd brought on this amazing consultant team. He had Woods Bagot, he had Aspect, and we were very fortunate to join that team. And it was an old paper mill, and it was a paper mill on the Georges River. The paper mill on Georges River, hey? But what we wanted to do was create this incredible metaphor. So in this case, Vince's idea was to create a paper boat, because it's paper, and obviously paper also a boat, but it was about a vision for the future. So it became, again, this really powerful metaphor to use in storytelling. And when I was talking before about dialogue and engagement instead of one way, one of the great things about this project was that the community really got on board and became a part of it. So we had kids that drew on all these pieces of paper, and then that became the hoarding so that the kids could see the stuff they'd made. We had these amazing mobiles that were in the display suite that came from an artist who was at the Kazula Powerhouse. So it became a thing that everyone got involved in. It wasn't so push. It was like, let's be a part of this community, let's make you a part of it, because it was really part of the idea of the brand. And we even made sculptures. That actually looks much better now. It's all rusted. It looks beautiful. Okay, so how many people have seen architectural marketing that looks like this? How often do you see beautiful black and white photography, crazy angles, let's capture that building to make it look really sexy? This to me is really the kind of stereotype that I'm talking about. This to me is the cow, the normal cow. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree that we've all seen it a million times. And this was the challenge we had that we worked when we worked on Grosvenor Place. And Grosvenor Place, obviously a remarkable building designed by Harry Seidler, like really quite iconic, but the challenge we had when we started working with this client was that many people considered it to be a bit dated. It's an 80s building, you know, and they were really not sort of understanding its architectural merits, and it couldn't necessarily just be sold on its architectural merits anymore. So we were given the job of how would we rebrand Grosvenor Place, and I want to show you how we turned it into a purple cow. So you can see how fundamentally different the marketing was. And we really set out to do something that was disruptive. We had to do something that would be disruptive on the pavement as you walked around it, that made you look. But we still used a lot of the same components. So you can see this eye here came from the shape of the architecture. But also one of the other great things that we did is that we took a lot of Seidler's original theories in terms of how he used to approach design, and we actually made it the narrative for the brand. But we used it in a really kind of crisp way. And like it was a dialogue, and it was a dialogue that kind of was in that thought leadership space. And one of the other things you'll notice we did is we actually got Harry's signature. He signed the building, because our whole theory was it was about culture at work. It was about saying this is actually a work of art that Harry Seidler's created, that we should be appreciative of it. And that, like any artist, that the architect should sign the work, you know, that it's his work. And as you can see here, we used all of these points of view from Harry. And these were actual ads in the Financial Review. So instead of the typical ads that everyone's seen of, you know, a picture of a building that all starts to feel the same, it was a very brave client that was happy to have these, you know, great quotes and these really disruptive pages, and it absolutely created a huge difference to them in terms of the success of their recruitment for people to come into the building. So you can see that repositioning, I hope. Okay, so now I'm going to give you chapter 3. We're almost at the end. How do you become a great storyteller? So I want to start out by saying there's no coincidence that this talk is in 3s. Okay. One of the wonderful talented designers, Kieran, I hope he's in the audience. Great thing of working in design agencies is you can throw it to someone who's more talented than you and say, can you help out? So stories happen in 3s. Has anyone noticed that? The 3 little pigs. The 3 blind mice. The 3 amigos. And then in advertising, slip, slop, slap, look, listen, what is it? Anyway, things happen in 3s. There's a reason for that. The theory is that our human brains like to use patterns, and 3 is the smallest pattern that people can remember. So it's very, very powerful. So when you're thinking about, just on a really practical level, unpacking a presentation, unpacking a story, the rule of 3s is a really good thing to remember. Learn from the masters. So this guy here, Aristotle, hopefully everyone's heard of him, he actually mapped out 2,000 years ago a lot of the fundamental rules of storytelling, a lot of the fundamental rules of persuasive writing and arguing. That graph I showed you at the beginning of time and content and there being too much, if you haven't made the effort to make what you're about to say directly relevant to your audience, they will zone out incredibly quickly. You will lose them incredibly quickly. And we are in the me generation. People want things to be custom made for them all the time. So take your time to think about who am I actually speaking to here and what do they want to hear, not what do I want to say. And again, this is a really common mistake that businesses make. They want to broadcast what they're about and they haven't thought about whether their audience is interested. I showed this talk to my son last night. He said, "Mum, you can't put that up there. Develop a plot." He said, "I think you're childish." I said, "I'm going to put it up there anyway. They already know I'm childish." Okay, there's a reason for this. Great stories have a great plot, and they have characters, and they have drama. And one of the tools that we often use when we're creating brands is a thing called brand archetypes, where you assign a character to a brand. So Luke obviously is the hero. He's the reluctant son who doesn't know he's a Jedi and he doesn't really want to do it. And then he rises up and he becomes, a Jedi master. Darth Vader, he also comes from an archetype. He's the ruler archetype. There are lots of brands that are very kind of powerful and, they have the Dark Star and they're the ruler. And then Han Solo, he is the outlaw. He's the guy, the guy from the, does it in the way that nobody's meant to do it, but he ends up being really successful, And there are all these different characters. And then this guy down here, obviously, we have the Jedi, what's his name? Oh, Yoda, thank you. He is, you can tell, that's why my son told me not to put up there, right? I don't know Star Wars well enough. He is the sage, right? He's the wise one, he tells you what to do. He's the wise one. Think about what archetype you're coming from, because in most categories, people all come from the same archetype. Like I can bet that most of you try and say we're very expert, you've done a million projects like this before, we're so expert, come to us, right? Whereas these days, sometimes if you just always communicate the same way, it's not disruptive enough, it's not interesting enough, So we tell people, think about the archetype, but think about the story you're telling. Are you overcoming evil, or what's the challenge? What was the battle you had to overcome? Dramatise it, have a plot. Have a plot with 3 sections. Okay, make it personal. Does anybody know this story? Is it just me? I remember as a kid, my parents had the book Sydney Builds an Opera House. And I remember being quite interested in that. It's probably how I ended up in design. And it had a bit about how Utsum couldn't figure out how to build it until he ate an orange. And he looked at an orange and he went, "I figured out how to build that building, And it was, the story is that the segments of the orange inspire the opera house, It's a great story. Think about, what was my moment of inspiration? What is something that can make this personal? So when I sit down and talk to someone, I go, this came from something very personal to me, because people appreciate that it helps us all to engage. We're all people. So the more personal you can make the story, the better. And again, as I said in that kind of how we're taught to write essays, we're taught to take ourselves out of it. But now people want you to put yourself more into it. Does that make sense? Okay, use compelling visuals. So this is a really interesting fact and a picture to demonstrate my point. So people will recall the word circle, only 10% will recall that 72 hours later, whereas 65% of people will recall seeing a circle 72 hours later. So remember, the visuals often will have a lot more impact than words. And so many of us, when we're doing PowerPoint presentations, all this stuff, we cram the screen full of words, but actually it's better if you can rely more on visuals. And visuals, obviously, in the world of Instagram, in the world of Snapchat, in the world of Pinterest, all that sort of stuff, visuals are becoming more and more important. We're all on our mobiles and video pictures are very, very effective on those channels. Okay, a couple more things. Think about shareability. Would anybody share it? Does anybody care? Because amplification through sharing is really, really important. And when you amplify things through sharing, it's kind of reflecting the fact that people want to actualise through the brands they engage with now, like companies and individuals. They want to go, aren't I clever? I'm going to share this with you, and the next person's going to share it on. They're going to make some clever comment. So think about shareability. Of course, I shared this. Intelligent people tend to be messy, stay awake longer, and swear more. Obviously, But 2 million people share that on Facebook. And this one here, I love this. Sorry, I put this in intentionally to be slightly provocative. this inflatable Irish pub turns your backyard into a bar, so, we're all architects, something that you might share and say it's funny. Old music is outselling new music for the first time in history, So think about, well, sometimes it can just be a quirky fact, something interesting, but something that people will go, wow, I'm going to share that. That's really interesting. Here is a viral top 10 from 2016. The top things that people like to share. Science says. Science says if you eat this, you won't get cancer. Science says this, science says that. Data-driven. 2 million people believe blah, 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 blah. Strong opinions, political. This was 2016, it was Donald Trump's, election year. There were a lot of people having strong opinions. But be political, again, have an opinion. Celebrity, heartwarmers. We did this beautiful thing and now, look at this beautiful puppy. Hell, can I just say cats are big. I'm in luck. Usually unhappy cats, but we won't hold that against them. Health and food. It's a healthier building because we made people more healthy in this way. People really care about health. Obviously, well-being, another one of those buzzwords we hear everywhere. Images, quizzes. Have you ever thought about just sending out a quiz? How many of us do Facebook quizzes? Just that lazy quiz. Inspirational quotes about life. They help us, get through the day, don't they? And number 10, lists. Hence why we have a list. Okay. This is my last page. Edit ruthlessly. I'll let you read it. So even a book like Frankenstein in the age of Twitter can get down to a simple 4 lines. And I think this is one of the other mistakes we all make in this era, is that people don't have time to read as much anymore. They don't want to read that huge diatribe. They want to get you to get to the point quickly. And the sharper what you say is, the more to the point it is, the more that you're communicating in a way that's really engaging, the better. So be really ruthless, cross out as much as you possibly can, just keep getting down to that really essential information, and that way, you're going to engage with people and they're going to be more interested in your story. So really, like any good book, you have to try and cut out the bits that aren't relevant to the story. And that's my last slide. For anyone who's interested. That's where you can find me on Twitter. Okay, I'm going to